In my 20s, I learned 5 valuable skills that allowed me to start and scale a business to over $1 million a year. And if you want to make more money, these are the skills that I would learn as fast as possible. There's a quote that has really stuck with me for a long time. And the quote goes, income traces skills over time. So if you look at my career, my income, at least until I launched my business, did something like this. It was like kind of stagnant, went up a little bit, and then bam, okay? And it looked like here, there was an overnight success, okay? But that was really far from the case, as you probably know. If you look at the skills I was accumulating during all of this time here, it actually looked like this. I was slowly building up more skills. And then essentially what happened right at the bottom here at this inflection point is I changed opportunity vehicles. So I'll actually paint out like my story of really how this all came to be. So same graph, we have money on the y-axis, time on the x-axis. So when I first started off, I was bartending. So as you can imagine, I was making about nothing. And then as I was bartending, I started an agency. Now, an agency I could have made a lot more. Because I sucked so bad, I barely made any more money. I mean, I actually was making sales. I was doing probably 30 to 40K a month rev, but I blew it all on expenses and dumb stuff that I shouldn't be doing because I had no idea how to manage money. I was like 22. So I started an agency. But the nice thing about this agency, even though I maybe made a tiny bit more than bartending, the nice thing about this was I learned paid ads. And I actually still, most of what I know from paid ads today even comes from those days way back when I was learning it at 22. I learned funnels and I learned a little bit of sales. Okay. So I started to accumulate some skills in doing this. Then I got into my first 2 sales jobs and still here. So we'll call this sales 1 and 2. Still here, I still wasn't really making that much money, but this is where I really started to hone in and focus on one thing and focus on selling. And so I started to get pretty substantially better at sales. Now in sales job 3, I had another step up in income, and this is my final sales job. But this I learned a ton, and mainly it was because of the company I was working for. So I would go as far as to say is I really got close to mastering sales here. But at the same time, I was working for an 8-figure company in office. So I got a really good idea of how 8-figure operations work. So I got to see, okay, here's how, like, this is a big company. We were doing over $1 million a month. We were one of the first companies to do over $1 million a month in the entire industry. So I got to see, okay, here's how a finance department works. The ops department works. Here's how we run meetings. Here's what leadership looks like. Here's what recruiting looks like. That experience that I just learned by osmosis was just absolutely invaluable. What I also learned here is because we were coaching really the entire industry, we were kind of the industry leader for a lot of coaches and high ticket offers and so on and so forth. I got a bird's eye view of really the industry, what was working, not working. And really what I kind of figured out is like, what are the common patterns of the most successful businesses, especially as it relates to their offers. Another thing I learned here is because I was a really high performing sales rep, I could only get so much through inbound. And so I actually started to make my own organic posting and social media posting and branding and copywriting that I was doing on Facebook. So I started to get pretty decent at organic social media lead gen, which was a huge skill. That skill was amazing that I built that even at the time, I really didn't realize how valuable that was actually going to be. So you can see here, I'm starting to stack a lot of these skills. Then I quit, so I was off during a short period here. But during this time I was off, I really took the time to focus on organic social and copy and started to build a little bit of an audience. So that was really that kind of last brick I laid in terms of the skills. And then I started my business and boom, this happened. But the main thing is I switched the opportunity vehicle. And again, my income caught up to my skills over time. I was building all these skills. So if you look at my skills, it was like this. And then essentially all I did at a certain point was I just switched the opportunity vehicle. And then it looked like I had an overnight success. But really, I was just driving a faster boat and I was realizing all of this skill building that I had actually had. So if you're really starting off, or even this, you'll see this applies as you get into even the 7, 8, and probably multiple 8 figures. The more you could just focus on stacking the right skills, the income will just catch up over time. Right? It's the same reason why Warren Buffett, if he lost everything in a single day, he'd almost have billions of dollars the next day because of his skill of judgment and just because of decision-making and people trusting him to make investments based on his judgment and worldly wisdom, etc. So in case you're wondering in terms of how I actually did this so fast, like what were the actual tactics? So essentially the first thing is I really focused on organic social, as I mentioned already previously, but I built a Facebook group and an audience on Facebook. So that was a big thing. I would launched to that group. So the reason I was able to do the revenue so quickly is because I essentially launched and took a bunch of sales calls over the course of 2 days. And then I just basically filled out the program. So when I launched, I took 12 sales calls. I closed all 12. Okay. And I did that. So, and why was I able to close all 12? Well, again, it was because obviously I warmed them up through some of this, but really the more important thing was I was just already really good at sales. So I took 12, I closed all 12 because it was my offer. It was the first time selling something that was a warm audience, my offer. So it was a huge disadvantage that I had. So I closed all 12. That made life a whole lot easier. And I did that at about a 10K price point. So it ended up being 81K just because of payment plans, but I already was able to command a large premium because I was really good at sales and I just had a 100% close rate. So it just made getting to that 7-figure run rate so much easier. Real quick, and then we'll get back to the video. If you need help with any of these 3 things, either installing a lead acquisition internally in your business, you need new sales reps, and you want sales reps recruited done for you, and also get the sales consulting and sales management help that comes with that, or if you just want overall business strategies of how you can scale to 8 figures or beyond, go to the link in the description, click that link, check out the video, and then book a call with our team. We'd love to help you with any of those 3 things. Now back to the video. Okay, so what are the lessons if you're just starting off? And also maybe you're not just starting off, you've kind of heard this before. What are the lessons if you're doing 7 or even 8 figures in your business? Well, there's several. So we'll start with the beginners and then we'll move on to 7 and 8 figures later. So the biggest thing if you're a beginner is you really want to focus your early 20s on skills and just trying to acquire and build as many skills as you possibly can. Well, how do you do this and what skills should you actually build? That's a great question. So number 1, what I would do is pick an industry that you're passionate about. Okay. So this could be anything. If you're passionate about info, high ticket coaching, great. If you're passionate about fashion, you get into the fashion industry. If you're passionate about finance, you get into the finance industry. Whatever it is, you pick an industry that you're passionate about. Really, the subset of this is try to work for an up-and-coming company in the industry that's small enough to where you can kind of get access to the founders and people you're going to learn a lot from, but big enough to where you can kind of see they're starting to get to that escape velocity. That was something I just did by complete luck, but that was a very, very important thing I did. So pick the right company in the right industry. Pick an industry you're passionate about because that's what you should do anyways. Now, here's what's really important. How do you know what skills to build? You want to acquire the skills that are the closest to value creation. Okay? So what does that even mean? So I'll give you a few examples. In software, Hormozy says, for instance, you have to know what business you're actually in. Okay? So in services, we're in the marketing and sales business, and like high ticket info coaching, et cetera. We're in the marketing and sales business. So the main skills are going to be marketing and sales. In software, it's actually, and if you've ever been involved with a software company, you know this for sure, it's really the product business. So what are the skills closest to the value creation in a product-based business? Well, in software, it's going to be engineering, code, and then also nowadays AI, right? So if I was getting into that, and actually one of the people that really helped me crystallize this framework was HubSpot's co-founder Dharmesh, where he was saying that's what he tried to do is he got into these software companies and he realized the people making the most money are the people closest to value creation. That's really the people making the products. And so he actually self-taught himself code so that he could be closer to the value creation and then build those skill sets. He went from company to company to company and eventually started his own thing. I was like, that's exactly what I did. I just did it in a different way and I didn't make billions of dollars like Dharmesh. So he did it much better than me. But that's a software example. Let's say you're in high ticket, info, or like online services, right? So like I already mentioned, that's really the marketing and sales business. That doesn't mean that essentially the product is not important and the service is not important. All that stuff is obviously important, but really the value creation happens on the demand gen side. Like most of these businesses are not supply constrained, they're demand constrained. So therefore, it's much more about unique different ways to differentiate yourself, make brand associations, market, sell, etc. That's where the value creation is. So what are the skills for that? It's going to be the obvious ones in the industry, right? Media buying, copy, offers, and sales. That's why most times the highest paid people in companies are the salespeople, the media buyers, the copywriters, the ones coming up with offers, etc. That's why a lot of founders in this industry that do really well, what they're really focused on more often than not, and the skills that are the most highest leverage for them are the offers, marketing, copywriting, sales, etc. And then managing those people, of course. Let's look at a different business. So like a cleaning business. Okay. So what type of business is this? Well, if you know what business you're in, this is actually a supply side constrained business. So, which means it's scaling labor and recruiting and hiring and managing good cleaners and keeping them kind of all in a row, right? So if you know businesses or you worked with businesses like this, we've actually worked with a few. A lot of times they don't have issues getting business. It's just demand. A lot of trades are this way as well in terms of like roofing, home service, any home services, sometimes solar that's a little bit more competitive, pest control, like stuff like that. A lot of times it's scaling the techs and it's really a supply side constrained business, and just organizing all of that is where they really struggle. So let's just take cleaning, for example, to make it specific. What would be the main things you would want to focus there and the main skills you would want to build? Well, it would be, honestly, for one, probably learning Spanish would be, because a lot of the market is Spanish speaking. It'd be management, QC, leadership, and then really getting good recruiting funnels for it. And, also like culture, making sure you're hiring correctly, all of that stuff. Like the big difference, like I remember watching an interview from Tommy Mello. He's scaled a home services company in the garage door space to over $600 million. And one of the biggest things I really learned by listening to what he was doing is most of his focus really, or most of his company was really unlocked when it came to actually scaling and figuring out how to scale the techs and making sure they're doing what they should be doing. They're representing the brand. They're not smoking in the truck. They're not being lazy. They're actually efficient. They're running the routes the right way, all of that stuff, right? So that's what I would focus on if you're just starting off. And honestly, this is a very proven formula. You want to find an industry that you're passionate about, get into a good up-and-coming industry or up-and-coming company where you can kind of get the right mentorship, because you're really in an apprenticeship at this point. Identify where the value creation is, get as close to the value creation as possible, and then build skills around that. That'll allow you to eventually start your own company in that industry. Or like a lot of people, if you look at like the SaaS industry, et cetera, they end up becoming a highly paid consultant outside of the industry. Regardless of the route you go, you're certainly going to make a lot of money. So what if you're already doing 7 and 8 figures? What do you do with this information? Well, the one thing I want to say is the next level, oftentimes the next level of exponential, not like gradual, but exponential growth in your business is usually unlocked when you acquire or learn a skill, which you can actually learn it yourself, or you can, as you get bigger, you can actually pay to bring great people into your company who already have the skills that you want, right? But usually the next level is unlocked through acquiring or learning a certain skill, the next exponential level for that matter. So I'll give you an example. Here's kind of how the skills work in like the high ticket coaching online services based industry. So if you're below 100 grand a month, really the skills that you're lacking is offer, marketing, sales, right? So basically you need to figure out a basic product market fit. Okay, how do I create an offer that people are wanting, and people who don't know who I am are coming and raising their hand and buying consistently? How do I sell those people? And then how do I get one channel on one media platform, one funnel, et cetera, to just be able to have a system to pull the lever and get clients coming in at will? Once you have that, you can really scale to about 300 grand a month. But below that, usually people are stuck in the sense where they don't have a productized service. So they actually have fulfillment bottlenecks. Okay? Then below 600 grand a month, where people really get stuck is management. So they've unlocked what they need to with marketing, sales, et cetera. But usually at that point, there's a few sales reps, there's a few client success people, there's ops, there's finance, there's a couple marketers on the team. And it doesn't really need a full C-suite, but it requires you to sort of be the general manager and learn proper leadership and management and culture and all of that stuff for all the departments of the business and kind of get everything running together. A lot of people in our industry, because they tend to be pretty good at marketing and sales, they really struggle with this one. Now, similarly, they also struggle to get to the $1 million a month mark. Usually below that, it's C-suite, okay? And that's just a short way of saying it's how to lead leaders, recruit, hire, train, and manage leaders that can do what you used to be doing here. And this is where you start to really build out a CMO, CSD, client success director, a sales director, and so on and so forth. And really having these leaders in place that you can lead and adding these really high quality people into your business, they can drive revenue in and within themselves. That's very, very, very key. One of the things that one of my employees told me is kind of a good way to look at how we recruited and how we were able to scale to $30 million a year is he said when he came in, he was like, man, I couldn't believe how many people in the company could literally probably go off on their own and create a 7-figure business. Like there's a lot of 7-figure entrepreneurs under our multiple 8-figure company is kind of a way to look at it. And then a few even 8-figure entrepreneurs under our multiple 8-figure company. So the quality of the people that you have later on really will help you drive revenue moving forward. If you're wondering, for us, what are the skills that closers and Cole Gordon is trying to acquire right now? The biggest thing is enterprise account-based marketing. So for us to scale, what we need to do is really limit our income to complexity ratio. In other words, take on less clients. We'll keep taking on the clients we're taking now, but the growth needs to come from less clients who are actually worth more. And so essentially taking on enterprise accounts. So we have a few right now, but we want to scale that division of our company. And that's people who, they might be in any sort of business, roofing, solar, services, coaching, whatever, who need 10 to 20 reps a month, right? Or usually it's about 5 to 20 reps a month, but they can pay $10 to $40,000 a month in fees, and they stick for a long time because they have such an ongoing need. So that's a big skill we're trying to acquire right now. So that's it for this video, guys. If you want to see the full framework on really the 8-figure scaling roadmap, basically exactly everything to go from 0 to 8 figures, the next video is right here. You can check it out.